Greetings, everyone. I'm excited today to be in conversation with Linda Boutilier, and we're going to be talking about the People's Health Alliance here in North America and why that is so critical in this time of change that we're in on the planet. And we're going to talk about our backgrounds in terms of being therapists, being involved in emotional health, and how the People's Health Alliance is guiding us into some new models and new ways of supporting us in healing on all levels. But thank you for being here today, Linda.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, Heather. I'm so happy to be able to talk about this with you, and I really am grateful for the support that you've been giving the People's Health Alliance really since the very beginning. And you know, I couldn't I couldn't imagine having done this without you, frankly. So thank you.
Mhm. Well, thank you. And you are one of the critical founders and leaders of the People's Health Alliance here in North America. And you have a background of over 35 years as a licensed social worker. And I'd love in this conversation, you and I have this long history in the field and can kind of see some of the changes that have unfolded over time and why the PHA is so important in this time. So maybe we could start with talking a little bit about your background and how you got interested in the People's Health Alliance in the first place.
Okay. Yeah, so I am trained in clinical psychology. And in the 1970s, I was in school in San Francisco in clinical psychology. And then I moved into social work in the 1980s and graduated in 1986 with a master's in social work. I think that the move was the right move for me, although at the time I wasn't sure that I wanted to move from psychology into social work, but I see now why that was the right move for me. That I needed to be in a field that wasn't going to be so focused on behavioral health and was going to be more community based. That I always felt more comfortable being in a community based approach to emotional health. Um, and as I saw what was happening in the 1980s and into the 1990s with managed care in emotional health, and the fact that a lot of the healthcare insurance companies, the coverage wasn't even wanting to cover emotional health as one of the things that they would reimburse for, I became very concerned about where things were headed. And I felt strongly, even 30 years ago, that there needed to be a people's movement to do something alternative to what seemed to be the direction that our leaders were going in. I didn't think that the people who were in government or the people who were in the professional associations were getting it and we're going to understand and do something to make sure that we didn't move too far in the wrong direction. And so when the People's Health Alliance came along, I realized this is it. This is the movement that I've been waiting for, hoping for, sort of I was able to somehow visualize back in the 1990s something like that, but couldn't have articulated it back then. And it was like, okay, this is like part of why I'm on the planet. Like this
Mm.
is what I'm supposed to be doing. And has given me a sense of a hope and optimism for the future that I don't think I would have had if I hadn't gotten involved with the People's Health Alliance.
Our paths are so similar in so many ways, as we were talking before we got on the recording, because I too, you know, did my training in clinical psychology and then was practicing inpatient, outpatient, in private practice in California and saw in California managed care really came into place there early in the whole process as it was taking over nationwide. And like you, I felt that it was taking control of the therapy process in a way that wasn't about what's in the best interests of the person, but what was in the best interests for the profit for the insurance companies
Right.
and and then ultimately the pharmaceutical companies. And
They
so
they
I actually refused to enter into managed care and chose to see people at a wide range of fees to be allowing them to be more in control of their own healing journey. Because I think, and say a little bit about this, you and I both really understood that the so much of what's healing in the process is the relationship, not
right.
these interventions or um, pharmaceuticals that are fixing the problem.
Yes. So part of my training in California and San Francisco was with a group of professors who started a program in San Francisco based on their training with the Jung Institute. So, and Carl Jung had a very different view of psychotherapy than Freud did. And Carl Jung was always interested in helping people to become more conscious, to develop their psyche, which was also their soul, and that the relationship between the therapist and the patient or client was about helping them to become the person and the being that their soul had been destined to become. It wasn't about diagnosing illness. It wasn't about finding the right medication. It wasn't about making a living off people's illness. It was about helping people to become the best version of their soul's path, destiny that they could become.
He was also very interested in astrology and integrated that with his work, which I think was great. And so we both really are passionate about that holistic orientation, that healing is really about mind, body, spirit, not
Right,
something that you can separate out, which also is no longer a part of our modern healthcare systems, either
right,
emotional healing or physical healing.
right. I think it's unfortunate that we created a construct that divides mental health or emotional health and physical health into two different. I mean, how could they possibly be separated from a holistic point of view? It doesn't make any sense. But somehow we've been taught that that's the case, to the point where the um, people who were providing coverage for our healthcare actually thought that they could focus on physical health and not have to provide coverage for emotional health. Whereas I think that emotional health, and I've seen over and over again in my clients, that emotional health often determines physical health, that physical illness starts on an emotional level. I mean, both of us have worked with trauma, and anyone who's worked in the trauma field knows that trauma results in the breakdown of the physical body. The very cells of our body start to break down as a result of emotional trauma. And vice versa, the cells of our body can start to regenerate and resurrect and heal when that emotional trauma has been balanced and healed, and we're in more harmony with ourselves.
It's all integrated. And that's some of the critical work of Gabor Mate and others who've really shown how true that is. And so many physicians talk about the issues that their patients are bringing to them are about their trauma, their stress, and they're trying to get that assistance and not just be there for a 15-minute appointment, get a prescription, and feel like that's going to fix it.
Yes. And I was drawn to, as I was thinking about talking today, I was drawn back to Deepak Chopra, who talked about the fact that in emotional health, one of the things we saw in trauma was that people started to develop sides of their personality that they experienced as different people, that was so fractured and so fragmented that there wasn't even an integration of the aspects of their own personality, and that different parts of the personality could manifest different physical diagnoses, so that a part of the personality could test insulin deficient, and another part of the personality could test normal for insulin. And if that
Yeah.
really shows that there's some sort of underlying consciousness here that's that's going on.
Yes, I remember that research when I was doing training at that time in multiple personality disorders. Now it's called DID, dissociative identity disorder. But yes, it shows you how much our psyches, our bodies are all integrated and you can't separate it out.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us more about the People's Health Alliance and how it's a different paradigm.
Well, from my perspective, the People's Health Alliance is an opportunity to create a safe place for people to land as the healthcare systems that we know that we know are collapse. And one of the things that the People's Health Alliance has taught me is that this is global. I really was focused for a long time on the United States healthcare system and my lack of confidence that it was going in a good direction, and didn't realize that other countries were feeling the same way about their healthcare system. And so this is the People's Health Alliance has given me an opportunity to go global and really understand that this is a universal concern for people all over the world. And I've met like-minded souls, such as yourself, all over the world now who all have a very similar vision that we want healthcare to be about, first of all, people realizing that they have a lot more choice about how to be healthy and what's possible for the human body in terms of health in general, that there's a lot more you know, uh, deterioration of the body isn't inevitable, and regeneration of the body is more possible than we've been told. So for people to start to embrace that concept and have support for that, and also for people to do this in a way that's community based and heart based, so that the community becomes there's a healing community that you become part of, and it connects you on a heart level with people all over potentially the world. That the People's Health Alliance in the United States has moved from being focused on the United States to being focused now on North America. So we see ourselves as an international organization now. We're including Canada and Mexico in the organization. And the People's Health Alliance exists in other parts of the world. It started in the United Kingdom, 3 women in the United Kingdom who envisioned this, but it pretty quickly moved to Australia and New Zealand, who have thriving their own version of the People's Health Alliance in New Zealand and Australia, and in North America. There's in other parts of Europe. So yeah, it's really embracing healthcare for the world, not just for one nation.
And what's exciting about it is it's a grassroots movement.
Mm-hmm.
It's really coming from the people for the people.
Hmm.
But I also love how it's very Aquarian in that there's a sense of the way in which it's honoring the diversity of different countries, different communities, but providing support for us to develop whatever systems are needed where we are. And again, coming from community,
Right.
coming from being co-created by the people and healers and practitioners in that particular area.
And it's Aquarian in the sense of embracing innovation too, that we see all uh, aspects of healing, all different ways of providing healing as valid in themselves, and we're willing to explore and be curious about all the innovations that are coming forward now because of the Aquarian energy that's here. I don't think we have any idea how far healthcare is going to move in the next decade.
But like you and I were talking about before the recording, it's really moving from a power over model
Right.
and a hierarchical model that's ultimately about profit,
Mm-hmm.
not about people,
Mm-hmm.
to really creating a whole different paradigm. And as you were saying, being not only open to innovation, but also open to ancient wisdom and
Mm-hmm.
healing practices, holistic practices, you know,
Yes.
and allowing all of that to be integrated so that people have choice over what path is the right path for their own healing journey.
Yes. And the other big impact on my training was embracing energy psychology. So there was the Jungian psychology, which really brought in the spiritual piece. And then there was the energy psychology piece, which really brought in some of the ancient wisdom because it's based, a lot of it was based on Chinese medicine. And when we brought in people from who were traditional Chinese healers to help us develop that, the energy medicine, Donna Eden was one of the pioneers in that. But when we brought in people from traditional Chinese medicine to help us understand what we were looking at, what we were doing in terms of working with the meridian systems and the energy field of the body, um, they, I remember one of the teachers from China said, "You have no idea what you've discovered. Like you don't, you've just started. You see the tip of the iceberg of what you've discovered. We have thousands of years of experience with working with people's energy."
And that integrative understanding that everything is interconnected. They were really able to see the whole person. And too much of our current medical practices are these specializations focused on even just one part of the body and not seeing it as interconnected with the rest of the body.
Chinese medicine can't understand how we've even come up with this concept of emotional health separate from physical health. It doesn't make any sense to them.
Well, and they're really tapping into that ancient wisdom that it's all about being in right balance, right harmony, everything in right relationship with everything else, and that our own health is related to how we're interacting with the plants and the earth
Mm-hmm.
and the food around us and how we are in balance with each other. It's all interconnected.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
So, how is the People's Health Alliance creating this new model, and how do people connect with it and be able to work with this new paradigm?
So, from a practical point of view, we have a website which people can check out, the PHA and the PHA of North America.org. And practitioners can join our directory so that they are seen not only as possible people can go to our directory and find people who are aligned with our mission, but they can also hopefully be supportive to each other. And then the next step, I think, going forward is going to be to add a community directory, which is true with the website in the UK, where you can join people who are in your community who have a vision that's like-minded, that's going in this direction, and decide as a community what you'd like to create in your community so that it works for you, as you were saying before, that this very Aquarian in that community-based, and that each community makes a joint decision about what's best for their community, that fits their community, not something that's imposed from above or from some governmental agency.
Yeah, I think that's key because as you and I were talking about, the system is so dysfunctional right now, and it's not going to get solved by the government. It's not going to be solved from within the system. This is really creating an alternative that empowers us as people
Yeah.
to be creating a new paradigm, which I think is some of what's critical in this time of change and transformation that we're in as a planet. We're seeing a lot of the chaos of the systems that we've been in that are crumbling, that
Mm-hmm.
are dysfunctional. And we can be empowered to be developing, co-creating new systems that actually are allowing us to move in a radically new direction and create something that is empowering to all of us.
Yes. So in Rhode Island, which is where I'm based, we've had a few initiatives that were community based. One of them was that we had a free wellness day where we had people from the community who wanted to come and offer free services for a day, all get together in a specific place and offer free services for that day in all different modalities. And it was very well received. It's something that I'd like to see happen on a regular basis. We haven't quite got the human power yet to get that happening, but that's one of the things I'd like to see happening. And the other thing we did was we supported a local hospital. There was a psychiatric hospital in Rhode Island that went on strike in May, and it was the longest strike actually that in Rhode Island history. They just settled. They just agreed to a new contract a few weeks ago, so it went on for quite a while. And what we did was enlisted people from the holistic community to go to the strike line and work with the strikers to provide free services on the strike line, and also to enlist holistic healers to provide sort of gift certificates to go to healing places in Rhode Island to deal with their own emotional stress that they were clearly experiencing, because their hospital is now run by an investment company that isn't involved in profit, the definitely profit motive. And what happened was they felt that their administration was no longer listening to their needs in terms of well, it's a psychiatric hospital. So unfortunately, what was happening is that staff members were getting hurt by the patients and weren't feeling safe. And that wasn't really being addressed in the way that they needed it to. So they decided that they were going to walk off the job, and then they lost their income and they lost their healthcare coverage. And we decided it was something that we wanted to support, that they had the courage to do that, and that they were clearly, from our point of view, in an emotional crisis point and that we wanted to support them.
Yeah, it's so beautiful that you did that. And you and I have talked about how many hospitals are closing down now and how many hospitals are being taken over by these companies to be running for profit.
Mm-hmm.
And, one of the lessons that I learned, one of my experiences in clinical psychology was being a clinical director of a outpatient agency for underserved populations. And I remember how poorly paid the staff were because these clinics were just running on a shoestring and all based on insurance. And I remember being a part of the leadership of this clinic and saying, and the clinic at that time would have like a 50% turnover rate with the staff every year because of the stress, because of the low level of pay.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one of the things that I said to the leadership team is if we're not taking care of our staff, if they don't feel valued, respected, and supported, how are they going to have the energy to support the people that they're working with, the clients? So we instituted all these self-care, things that wouldn't cost money, but would really support the staff, help them feel valued. I started a holistic therapy team. We did supervision, we did yoga, meditation groups, and the staff went from a 50% turnover every year to a 90% retention rate. And it created this whole energetic in the community of the clinic that the staff felt cared for. They had energy to care for the patients and the families they were working with. It's all about creating that kind of healing energetic, that healing environment. But so many of our current medical systems are all about profit and
Mm-hmm.
treating the staff
Mm-hmm.
like expendable objects and
Mm-hmm.
treating the patients like objects
Yes.
in an assembly line.
Yeah, and so the People's Health Alliance is really interested in supporting healers to be as healthy as possible themselves, and also supporting training opportunities for people coming into the field to be as healthy as possible. So one of the models that we're really excited about is the Alice Walton School of Medicine, which had its first welcomed its first graduating class this September. Um, and it's designed to be a wellness community for the doctors, the future doctors who are training there, because so much of the training is not about the health of the people who are going to be providing the services. It just, that was one of the things that I appreciated about my training in San Francisco is they did care about the health of us who were providing the services and doing the healing. But that seemed to go out the window shortly thereafter. And um, it's just beginning to come back into people's focus, which thank goodness it is. But 50 years is a long time to be going in the wrong direction.
Well, and say a little bit, Linda, because you and I both experienced this shift too, of how more and more the pharmaceutical companies were funding the medical schools, were aligned with the insurance companies and controlling both emotional health services as well as medical health services.
Right. My understanding is that the the medical schools were under pressure from the people who they were being funded by, including pharmaceutical companies and other people who were donors to the medical school, to go in a direction that wasn't holistic, was purposely not holistic, was going to be very much about um, evidence-based science and pharmacology. And that was something that they could make um, money from in a way that they didn't feel like they were going to be able to make money from, like homeopathy, teaching medical providers about homeopathy or Chinese traditional Chinese medicine or some of the other things that because it gives people a chance to heal themselves as opposed to this top-down model, which we've become so accustomed to, where we have to go outside ourselves to someone else to be healed, and to be told what's wrong with us and then given the fix, as opposed to what I've learned is that as I've learned about homeopathy, I can treat myself when when I know I've been recently I was exposed to the COVID virus, and I started treating myself with homeopathic remedies, and it didn't develop into a full-blown episode. But if we can do that, how do you make money? You don't have as much control over the system.
Well, and you're really talking about a whole different model that is empowering us to be taking responsibility for our own health and our healing. But part of what was disillusioning for me when I was practicing as a clinical psychologist was realizing how much of the evidence-based research about the efficacy of different medications was the research was funded by pharmaceutical companies. So the evidence-based research was skewed to be supporting the pharmaceutical companies. So I think part of it too is stepping out of that whole profit-based system for health to come back to, I love what you said earlier, Linda, about coming back to not only that holistic understanding of health and healing, but how much it's about our consciousness also.
Yes, absolutely. It's an inside job. I was listening to you talk to David Clemens a few days ago, and he said it's an inside job. Yeah, it's that our body is designed to stay healthy, to recuperate, regenerate, resurrect from all kinds of things. But there was a man in Australia who started a treatment called Body Talk, where he said that if you are telling your cells that you have a bum knee, when your cells replicate, they will replicate a bum knee because they're consciously attuning to what you're putting out. That made so much sense to me. That was one of those aha moments. But yeah, that if we can stay in alignment, as you say, in right relationship with everything, and work on an energetic level and a consciousness level, we're going to be able to be much more healthy and have more longevity than we believe right now is even possible.
Well said. And that's another one of the things David Clements was talking about in his interaction with some of these highly conscious galactic beings. He said they had this capacity to tap into that subquantum field of source energy and regenerate their bodies, and that is what we're capable of. And as we're moving into the Aquarian age, coming out of this Kali Yuga period of being in a sense of separation, disconnection, disharmony, into higher consciousness. And we're getting infused by energies coming from the sun, coming from the galactic center. We have that capacity to remember our ability to
Yes.
tap into that source field energy and come
Yes.
back into balance.
Yes. And that's part of how I see my emotional health treatment is helping people to stay in that place. And I've actually observed, I've witnessed people with, in a couple of cases, very severe cancers in their body, like, stage 3 or 4 cancer in their bodies that they managed to, from the medical standpoint, get into remission because they decided that they were going to change their consciousness. I mean, one of the women I worked with who had leukemia, she was determined that she was going to raise her consciousness and keep it there no matter what, in order to be able to allow her body to regenerate. And she isn't suffering from leukemia right now.
It just shows the power of our consciousness. And I did an interview at one point with John Stewart Reed, who's done so much work with sound healing and that form of energy healing. And his wife, Annalise, has really developed her own program around the capacity of our healing through our consciousness. And she healed herself from illness through working with her consciousness. So, as you're saying, a lot of it relates to the stories that we buy into and the beliefs that we align with, and then what we're telling ourselves and communicating to our bodies.
Yeah, energy psychology, a big part of energy psychology is about releasing people from their limited beliefs. Um, that 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 once you realize that you have a belief that is limiting you, you can start to heal whatever it is that holds that in place so that it no longer is limiting you.
And I think another part of this that you were referring to earlier is, I mean, the root from an emotional healing perspective, the root meaning of psyche is soul.
Mm-hmm.
And when we can remember that we are soul selves having this human experience and that our souls are never out of balance. And the more that we can do that spiritual work and tap into that alignment with our soul selves, the more it supports us on healing on every level.
Right. And that trauma separates us from our soul selves, and creates a whole array of limiting beliefs and attempts to protect us from future trauma that create such fragmentation in the psyche that we don't even remember that we are a soul.
And you and I both have such a strong background in working with trauma. And as you said earlier, it is ludicrous to try to separate the body from our minds, our hearts, our soul selves, because so often, and I know you've experienced this, it would be clear to me when someone had trauma that they hadn't been able to work or resolve at the emotional level. The body was often the messenger of that.
Yes.
Whatever imbalance or symptom or issues were going on in the body,
Yeah.
many times the body was trying to communicate what needed to be dealt with and healed. And once that message was received and really worked with,
Yep.
it could clear.
Yes. And that's why I like the idea of body talk so much, because people tend to think, well, the trauma is being held in a certain part of the body and it's in that part of the body is broken. Actually, what you said, I think, is closer to the truth, is that the body is conscious and communicating, and there's a possible to have a conversation back and forth about, huh, why is it that I have a bum knee? Is it that I feel like it's not safe for me to walk? Do I feel like it's not safe for me to move forward in my life? Am I holding myself back because I'm afraid of moving forward because that's not going to be safe for me to do, or it's going to result in further trauma? What's the knee trying to tell me? Not only how do I help the knee to not feel like it needs to replicate itself as a bum knee, but what is it that the is trying to let me know.
So it's really about a path of healing and listening and being in relationship with ourselves, our psyches, our bodies, rather than taking some external intervention to fix what's broken.
Yes, yes. And health healthcare and healing is about providing the context, the environment, the safe space, the relationship, the heart-based relationship to help people feel safe enough to allow the healing to happen.
I know also that the People's Health Alliance in the UK is very associated now with the People's Food and Farm Alliance, and that realization that it's also about being in right harmony with the environment, with the
Natural
around.
world, the yes, what we're putting into our bodies. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. The, and again, the fact that that's been separated out as if it's not part of another piece I'm very interested in, emotional health for children. And I get frustrated sometimes that education and emotional health for children have been separated out because I belong to a group that was started in the UK for children's emotional health by the People's Health Alliance, but has now become an international group of people who are interested in providing children's emotional health in a different way. And one of the things that we're talking about is how can we integrate all the different experiences that children have helping them to be in right alignment with the natural world, but also as they're being educated for that to be integrative. And one of the women from Portugal has developed a beautiful program for teaching middle school children about mindfulness practices and using those during the school day as a way to stay in a place where how can education even take place if a child is not in alignment with themselves and their world? How can that even happen?
Well, and again, part of what I experienced in my years doing neuropsychology is both how our educational system was so not supporting children often in learning in the ways they learn best, but also how often ADHD, different attention deficit disorders, learning disabilities were related to trauma and
Mhm.
anxiety and stress. And yet again, children would be targeted with behavioral interventions or medications instead of looking at what is the root cause here. And
Yes, I talked to someone about this just yesterday, actually. An 8-year-old boy who's developing some very aggressive behaviors towards his peers and unfortunately towards some of the family pets. And he's in psychiatric treatment and he's on 4 different medications. And the family was wondering why it isn't helping. And I said, because you're going in the wrong direction, that he needs to be in an environment where he is taught how to be in relationship with other people and with the natural world so that he can get back into alignment with himself and his environment. And the 4 medications that he's on are probably creating side effects that are making that even more difficult.
yeah, and clearly he's not feeling safe in his own environment, and so
Mm-hmm.
he's protecting himself in the best way he knows how, but they're not looking at what's at the root of this. It's
Mm-hmm.
again that orientation of how do we fix this. Yeah. So, Linda, before we close, as you look at what's unfolding with the People's Health Alliance, what are some of your dreams about how it may develop or the direction it may move in?
Well, I'm really right now hoping that we can bring in the international aspect of the People's Health Alliance to what we're doing in the United States. So, if there's anyone out there from other parts of North America who want to join us, we welcome you with open arms. So that's one thing. And the other piece that I think I'd really like to see become a reality is what we were talking about before, that each community has a way of becoming a healing community for the members of that community, and that if we can help offer a model or a template or inspiration to have that happen, great. That's what we'd like to educate. We'd like to offer opportunities to learn about things that maybe are new and that people hadn't looked at it that way before, and really be a place where it's safe to talk about all the things we've been talking about today, because it's taken me a while to get to the place where I really feel comfortable using my voice in the way that I'm using it now. And the People's Health Alliance has definitely given me that opportunity.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing, Linda, and for how you've been honoring your own awareness now for 30 years of what's out of balance with our current systems. But I also appreciate your awareness, and this is some of the roots of your own passion from years ago also, that you're understanding not only that the healing journey needs to be holistic and integrating all the aspects of the self, but it also needs to be about being in healing communities,
Mhm.
because that in and of itself not only empowers and supports integrated and holistic healing modalities, but healing communities foster health on all levels for the people in the community.
Yes. And the planet, hopefully. Yes.
Yes. And is a part of this movement we're in into these new paradigms with the Aquarian age.
Yes. Yes.
Well, thank you for the work that you're doing and your critical leadership role in this. I will put some links down below for people to connect to the People's Health Alliance. And let's definitely stay in touch about this. I want to continue to support
Absolutely.
People's Health
Absolutely.
Alliance.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I've completely enjoyed this opportunity to share my passion about the People's Health Alliance.
Well, thank you. And thank you to all of you listening.